You just saw the first angle of the employee engagement triangle. You also saw how leaders, effective leaders, use narrative to create meaning and purpose for their employees. Now we want to talk about that second angle. We're going to call that efficacy or empowerment. Effective leaders use efficacy or give empowerment to their employees to help them achieve goals both individually and organizationally.
So next we want to talk about the next part of the triangle of employee engagement, and that's a sense of efficacy. What we mean by that really is people's sense of their own effectiveness, their capabilities, their ability to accomplish things. Another word we hear used here, and I use this parenthetically, is empowerment. And the reason I do that is, and I'm scared to talk about empowerment, is because empowerment is just an overused buzzword, and too often it's thrown out there, and it's meaningless because it's thrown out, and it's hollow because it's overusage. So many of you have heard me share this, but I remember in college even, I wasn't a business major or anything, but out of interest I took an organizational behavior class, and I remember I didn't have to be paying attention to anything. I could be daydreaming, and the teacher would call on me, and I hadn't been following the discussion along. And I learned very quickly that all I had to say, the teacher would say, well, Dan, what do you think? And I'd say, you just got to empower people. And he would go, yes, good, excellent. As if that was the answer to everything. I didn't even know what we were talking about, but if I threw out that term, I got the kudos, right? And that's what I want to avoid with us. So what we want to talk about here specifically is efficacy or empowerment, and actually what you have to do to increase people's sense of what they can accomplish. Look at this from Robbins and Judge, again, those scholars who wrote that textbook I told you about earlier. The higher self-efficacy, the more confidence you have in your ability to succeed. So think about this, okay? So in difficult situations, which all of our employees face, people with low self-efficacy are more likely to lessen their effort or give up altogether. Okay, so your employees face difficult circumstances. If they have low self-efficacy, they give up. Okay, or they lessen their effort, while those with high self-efficacy will try harder to master the challenge. That's huge, okay? In addition, individuals high in self-efficacy seem to respond to negative feedback, or what we might call constructive feedback, with increased effort and motivation. You and I dream of having a workforce filled with people of high self-efficacy, okay? And the good news is we can increase that, right? We can increase that in people. How do we do it? Coaching competency, sharing as much information as possible, and creating autonomy through boundaries, right? Let's talk about these one by one. Again, here's Dilbert telling us what autonomy and engagement are not. You know, asking for people's opinions when you're really not going to do anything with it, but you're hoping that it looks that way on the outside. That's bogus empowerment, and it does more damage than good. Okay, so if you really want to empower people, you really want to increase their self-efficacy, you've got to be committed to it, and here's how we do it. First thing is coach competency. Find things that your people are naturally drawn to within their job, okay, and let them do it. I think my boss is actually pretty good at this. He finds people's niches, right? So it's still relevant to it, so they're still serving a purpose within their job role and a role within the organization, but finds tasks for them to do that. That's not always easy, I understand that, but we want to get people doing things that they're good at because people like to do what they're good at, okay? This is true empowerment. It gives people confidence, competence, freedom, and resources to act on their own judgments. Okay, it gives them there's a trust and a moral understanding that's developed between followers and leaders when there's that kind of empowerment, true empowerment, not bogus empowerment. Okay, and then we've all heard that Chinese proverb: you teach, you catch a man a fish, you feed him for a day; you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Covey really like to use that. Well, the question is, how do you do that? How do you teach them how to fish? Well, here's the principles of self-efficacy that will help people learn how to fish. This will really teach them competency and empowerment, right? First is you give them mastery experiences. That is, you coach them and you help them learn skills until they have mastered them, and then all of a sudden they love it. Okay, they know how to fish. They know how to do it. You sit there, you show them how to cast the line and or bait a hook and cast the line, et cetera, et cetera. I need to stop here because I don't fish and I don't know what I'm talking about. So, but anyway, you give them those experiences. Look, if I'm good at something, in fact, LeBron James, probably the best basketball player in the world right now. on was it Sunday? Saturday or Sunday, his team was playing in the playoffs, and his coach drew up a play. There's 1.7 seconds left, and his coach drew up a play, and it wasn't for him. LeBron James and him had been having an off night, but LeBron James has self-efficacy. He has confidence, and he said to his coach, he said, "No, no, no." Right? And you can see who has the power here. He said, "No, we're going to run I'm going to take the last shot." He did. LeBron James hit the last shot, hit the game winner. No time left. His team won. Okay. It's because he's done this enough. He's had enough success as a basketball player that those master experiences have given him self-efficacy. The other thing is modeling or vicarious learning. All right. This is people seeing other people doing things, maybe seeing a leader modeling appropriate behavior and then saying, "Hey, I can do that. Okay, I can do that." Right? Social persuasion is you cheering on and verbally communicating to your employee that you have confidence that they can do the job. That matters. Okay, that is important. And one of the best ways, by the way, to harken back to a webinar we did months ago, one of the best ways for you to socially persuade people that they've got efficacy, that you believe in their abilities, is to give them challenging goals. Okay. You verbalize that you believe that they can accept the challenge, and that actually, I want you to think about this, okay? This isn't just raw stuff. This actually increases people's self-efficacy. This actually increases their ability to do things. Ability is not a fixed property, okay? It can be changed, and doing these things that I'm telling you, that actually increases people's ability. The last one we're not going to spend any time on, it's psychological arousal, and I'm not comfortable talking about arousal, so basically, it's, you psych someone up to a state where they're so hyped that they walk across hot coals. It's that kind of a thing. Okay, but anyway, I'm not sure that's necessarily what we want to do in an organizational setting. Okay, so that's coach competency. The next step to empowerment is share information. Right. Employees with information are motivated because they feel accountable. There's a quote that I love: that employees who don't have information don't feel engaged, can't be held accountable, and employees with information can't help but take responsibility. And I think that is so true, because when you share information, all the news, good and bad, with your employees, anything that isn't proprietary, right, that isn't confidential, as you share all the news, even though you might feel it's above people's pay grades, you're showing trust, you're showing them that, hey, I think you can help do something about this, right? I'm going to treat you like an adult, rather than no. The adults will handle the adult things, and the kids will handle the kid things, right? I love this from Thomas Jefferson, that whenever people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. His thinking was, well, look, a republic can work if people have information. Same thing in an organization. Give them information, and people can do something about it. In fact, one of my favorite examples of this is a ritzy country club that, in a bad economy, was starting to do poorly. And believe it or not, one of the ways they were losing money is that their very understandably wealthy clientele felt entitled, as they would play tennis or golf, felt entitled in the locker room when they showered to take home the very expensive shampoos and soaps. Okay? Because they're like, oh, of course I can take this. This is the kind of country club this is. And this country club was kind of hurting, but they didn't want to put a sign that said, "Do not take soaps and shampoos home," because that doesn't fit their clientele, doesn't fit their culture. They didn't know what to do about this. Finally, they had the bright idea of sharing all the information, good and bad, with everyone, and they shared this with the people that actually worked in the locker rooms, the locker room attendants. And when one of the locker room attendants heard that this was a challenge they were facing, he said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll fix it." And he did. He fixed the problem the next day. All he did was he started removing the caps from the soaps and the shampoos. In the morning, he'd go in. They'd be available there for people to use them, but he would hide the caps so people couldn't take them home. They couldn't put them in their bags, and this solved the problem. Okay, and they didn't have to sort of violate their culture and that kind of thing, because people didn't know why the caps were missing, and that no one on the board or at the leadership, quote unquote leadership, would have ever thought of that. But when they shared information and treated people like they could handle the good and the bad, people were empowered to make decisions, and it helped their bottom line. Okay, the final concept is this idea that seems sort of paradoxical, but it's not, and that's you create autonomy by giving people boundaries, right? Think about it this way from Ken Blanchard, the 1-minute manager in situational leadership. He said, boundaries in a culture of empowerment is not to restrict action, but rather to create freedom to act within defined responsibilities. So you give people boundaries saying, look, this is your scope of responsibility, but within that scope of responsibility, as limited as it might feel, I want you to go to town. I want you to do what you feel is necessary to accomplish these goals, to make this limited scope of responsibility work. Now, one of the things you do when you and I are creating autonomy through boundaries, we need to make sure that the boundaries are above the waterline. And the analogy is that I want you to think about is a boat. Let's say your enterprise is a boat. You need to give their boundaries, their responsibility needs to be above the waterline, whatever that is for them. If you and I are on a boat and the employee messes up and they poke a hole above the waterline and we're out at sea, no biggie. We fix the hole. It's not going to do anything. If we give them something that they're not ready for, that they are not, if we haven't coached competency and all of a sudden we just say, nope, here's total autonomy. You guys can do whatever you want. And they don't have the capacity to do it, they don't have the information they need to do it, that's below the waterline. And if they poke a hole in it, guess what? The boat sinks, right? And so we want to make sure that it's above the waterline by assessing their competencies and other things, right? This kind of clarity helps to eliminate trepidation. Look, here's your responsibilities, here's what you can do and cannot do, but in that area that you can do things, it's all up to you. That's empowering. Okay, there's nothing empowering about giving people carte blanche when they don't have the capacity to do it, right? And then finally, more training is needed here, or may be needed. If maybe they're not comfortable even within their above the waterline responsibilities, well, train them up, coach competency, help them have mastery experiences, and then all of a sudden they'll seek out, they'll crave that autonomy. Okay, so remember, when we are going to teach self-efficacy, if we do it through coaching competency, by sharing as much information as possible, and creating autonomy through boundaries.